Throughout history, many civilizations ushered periods of prosperity in the regions they grew up in. In the West, many think of classical Greece and imperial Rome as examples of this, while in China, the heights of dynasties like the Tang and Song come to mind. Sandwiched between those two poles of civilization is the Indian subcontinent, another cradle of human civilization full of ethnic and religious diversity, cultural achievements, and magnificent art. India has been ruled over by countless mighty empires over the millennia, but perhaps one of the greatest, ruling during India's classical golden age, is the Gupta Empire. This dynasty, which reigned from the 4th to 6th century CE, produced magnificent art as well as some of India's greatest poets and scholars. Its tenure also saw major developments in religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism that have lasted to this day. What was the Gupta state, and who were its famous kings? How did their economy and statecraft function? And what contributions did they make to Indian and world culture? In this video on the definitive empire of India's classical epoch, we will explore all this and more. Our information about the Gupta Empire comes from two sources. The first being literary sources, such as the poet Kalidasa, who may have lived in Gupta times, and the second being archaeological material, which comes in the form of coinage or architecture. Through the appearance of kings' names on coins, art in temples, such as in Udayagiri, which we will discuss later on, or Sanskrit inscriptions in places such as the Pillar in Allahabad, we can pass together a decent inference on the chronology of Gupta history and the core values of its society. Granted, it should be borne in mind that all of these sources are inherently biased, being made, for example, to praise kings of the age, and thus should be absorbed in an academic context rather than at face value. The origins of the Gupta Empire can be found in an era when the Indian subcontinent was in a protracted period of fracturing and transition following the collapse of the Maurya Empire. During this period, various empires that ruled the northwest of the subcontinent, such as the Kushans and Sakas, had risen and fallen. The Ganges plain was equally geopolitically capricious, with various states, such as the Nagas, the Vakatakas, and the Kshatrapas rising to prominence, then collapsing, while large areas remained controlled by the Adivasi peoples or indigenous tribes of various localities. The memory of the Maurya Empire from some 6 centuries before still occupied a giant place in the social memory of India's rulers, as they were the only ones to come close to uniting the subcontinent. The Vahanas, one of the juggernauts of central India, were a shadow of their former selves, but had continued the tradition of patronizing literature and religion, and had begun the process of using Sanskrit as a language of high culture, instead of one only used in religious ritual. In terms of religion, India was much different to today. The various sects of Buddhism and Jainism, which today are minority faiths in India, were still strong as religions of kings, nobles, and merchants. Hinduism was also in a period of transition. Before the Common Era, the most prevalent form was that of the Vaidika, which focused on worship of multiple deities in a typical Indo-European fashion. Gods such as Indra for thunder, Agni for fire, Varuna for the ocean, and Surya and Chandra for the sun and moon were preferred, as they were mentioned in the Vedas. This pre-Gupta period also saw the beginning of the worship of Vishnu and Shiva, as well as the development of Puranas, which brought Hinduism closer to the faith as we understand it today. It is this tumultuous period of Indian history when the land was fractured and its cultures and religion were in a period of transition that the Guptas would emerge onto the scene. The Guptas began their empire in the land of Magadha, the same region from where the Mauryas had risen centuries earlier. This link to the Mauryas became quite important to the Guptas, who used similar tactics of propagation and statecraft to draw parallels between themselves and that prestigious unifying empire of old. The throne of Magadha itself became a tool to help the young empire achieve legitimacy in the eyes of its peers, precisely because of its Mauryan legacy. the founder of the empire was most likely a man named Srigupta, for whom the dynasty is named after. Not much is known about him, as he's left us no coins or inscriptions, although sources from the reigns of later Gupta kings, and even some Chinese monks, claim he ascended to the throne of Magadha around the mid-3rd century CE. Sparse records aside, it's generally accepted that Gupta seems to have established a certain level of control over territories in Magadha, setting the foundations of the empire that would follow. His son, Chandragupta I, would be the Alexander to Magadha's Philip, conquering many kingdoms of the surrounding region, including the Nagas of central India, and establishing the Guptas as an empire. From what we can surmise, the expansion of the empire was quite extensive under Chandragupta, as exemplified by the coinage minted during his reign, whose royal scenes of elegant harpists, noble archers, and Hindu deities project the visual imagery of a world-conquering monarch. After Chandragupta I, the Gupta Empire's most impactful ruler was a man called Samudragupta I, the son of the aforementioned Chandragupta I. His rule was defined by both the conquests he embarked upon, particularly against the western Kshatrapas, the Vakatakas and the Sakas of Gandhara, and the great art he patronized, such as the great poet Harishena's inscriptions on Allahabad. The Allahabad inscription is of particular note, as it showcases the sophisticated written Gupta script, a successor of previous Brahmi scripts and predecessor to the Devanagari script of later times. Moreover, the words themselves are an intriguing insight into Gupta ideology. This lofty column, the raised arm of the earth, proclaiming as it were that the fame having pervaded the entire surface of the world with rise caused by the conquest of the whole earth, has acquired an easy and graceful movement, in that it has repaired from here to the abode of Indra, the lord of the gods, of that prosperous Samudragupta, the Maharaja Dhiraja. By and large, the Allahabad inscription, alongside other inscriptions of its like, display how Samudragupta and other Gupta monarchs carefully cultivated an image for themselves as warriors, masterful poets, as well as a major philanthropist of religious endowments, all to legitimize their rule as enlightened philosopher kings. Samudragupta's successor, Chandragupta II, also known as Vikramaditya, was also well known for expanding the cultural achievements of the Gupta Empire, and was supposedly a patron of the Navaratnas, or 9 jewels, a circle of poets who, under Chandragupta II's patronage, managed to produce some of the finest Sanskrit poetry of all time. The Navaratnas' most well-known poet, Kalidasa, extolled his ruler's virtues and power in the language considered to be spoken by the gods of the Hindu pantheon. This practice, which had probably begun under the Sakas and Satavahanas, was popularized by the Guptas and set the standard for thousands of kings from Afghanistan to Java who would use similar Sanskrit language literature for the next millennium. Chandragupta II was not just a man of letters, but also one of conquest, having either vassalized or annexed the Kshatrapas to the east. These campaigns made the Gupta king renowned among people as far-flung as the Buddhist monks of China, with one such monk, Fa Xian, praising him as a great patron of religious endowments. This was not something unique to the Guptas, for the royal sponsorship of religious institutions was a consistent pattern in Indian history. Unlike in later Christian or Muslim kingdoms, which for the most part only had one state religion, Indian rulers often provided equal patronage to all the diverse faiths in their realms. Chandragupta II was no exception to this. While he was himself most likely a devotee of the god Vishnu, he appears to have given land and sponsored temples for various Buddhist sects and alternative Hindu schools. After the passing of Chandragupta II, a series of fairly unremarkable rulers came to occupy the Gupta throne. After them, the empire would receive a rejuvenation in royal vigor with the rise of kings Kamaragupta and Skandagupta. Like his predecessor Chandragupta, Kamaragupta was a beloved sponsor of land grants to all religions, whether Buddhist, Hindu, or Jaina. Skandagupta, meanwhile, was a great warrior, according to the Bhattari inscription, which mentions him fending off a Hephthalite invasion from the northwest. Later kings like Narasimhagupta would continue Skandagupta's legacy and continued his policy of fortifying defense from western invaders. However, in an echo of the Roman Emperor Trajan, Chandragupta would be the last great Gupta king who expanded the dynasty's power, and from that point on, the empire's borders were set, and for the rest of its history, it would be on the defensive until its slow decline began. Having thus finished a brief chronological survey of the Gupta kings, let us take a pause from the march of history and dive more deeply into what society in the Gupta Empire was like. By and large, the Gupta epoch was an era where high thinkers flourished. Many of the famous Indian scholars of the classical age, such as the great mathematician Aryabhata, who is said to have been a pioneer of the concept of zero, are said to have lived during this period. Works in astronomy, often based on earlier Greco-Roman breakthroughs, were also a feature of Gupta learning. As previously stated, Sanskrit poetry, written in the unique Gupta script, saw a great flourishing due to the dynasty's generous patronage of poets such as Kalidasa. Inscriptions such as the Prashastis of Allahabad are remarkable for their literary quality, a fact which both gave prestige to the Guptas and enabled their political performance in the arena of classical India. The cultivation of this prestige also extended to other means of literature, such as kavya, a genre encompassing plays, poems, and epics with elegant metaphors. Indian philosophy also developed highly during this period, as the Gupta Golden Age was the time where all 6 schools of Hindu philosophy, Vedanta, Mimamsa, Samkhya, Yoga, Vaisheshika, and Nyaya, were producing pioneering works. A criticism often levied against the Gupta Empire is that it presided over a period where India's cities were in decline. This, however, has been discredited by most modern historians, who assert that during Gupta rule, urban society was still vibrant in most of India. Consequently, this bias may have sprung up due to the fact that Gupta society primarily relied not on cities, but on rural agriculture and mining settlements to fuel its economy, which were sponsored by the royal court through a sophisticated bureaucratic system of tax grants and delegating land management to social notables like local religious figures, for whom religious ritual and land management went hand in hand. Overall, the Guptas ran an efficient yet institutionally diverse realm, focusing on delegating tasks to local kings they subjugated. Through an efficient system of ministers and prime ministers, as well as delegating work to local Advasi tribes and religious functionaries, the Guptas managed to have a prosperous yet decentralized empire. In addition, the empire was keen to utilize matrimonial alliances for diplomacy. Many kings would have many wives and balance out diplomatic relations through the balancing out of military coercion, economic engagement, and diplomatic means. The Gupta Empire has been called the Golden Age of classical India. The two terms classical and golden age are loaded terms which imply that this was an ideal society and that other periods, usually where different religions were present in India, were lesser. Neither of these are true, but taking those natural biases into account, we can nevertheless admire the many strides that Gupta India made in both art and religion. Gupta art developed from influences from the well-established Mathura, Gandhara, and Varanasi schools of art, and is known for its mobility and floral depictions. Gupta art saw an increasing focus on the Hindu deities most prominently worshipped by modern Hindus today, such as the Dashavatara temple in Deoghar, dedicated to Vishnu. Here, Vishnu is depicted lounging on Shesha, the king of snakes or nagas, while a woman, his wife, the goddess Lakshmi, is massaging his feet. Beyond Hindu monuments, Buddhist and Jain images of bodhisattvas and tirthankaras also were popular throughout the Gupta realm. Religious monuments often served not only spiritual, but also practical purposes, like the irrigation of land. For example, Udayagiri is a large temple site with various water management systems. A great statue within the site represents the deity Varaha, a large boar man and the third avatar of Vishnu, who stopped a large flood. The statue greets the rising sun in the morning, and the stylized pose embodies the sense of the spiritual power associated with the water management that the temple provides. As aforementioned, the Guptas were major patrons of all major Indian faiths, whether Hindu, Buddhist, or Jaina. Many temples during this period received patronage and endowments. Universities such as Nalanda, which was mainly the purview of Buddhists, remained prosperous and strong in their production of academic knowledge. However, the Guptas were mostly Hindu by persuasion, and as such, it was the quasi-priestly, quasi-judicial Brahmin caste who most likely held the most power among all the spiritual leaders in the Gupta realm. Brahmins received many tax-exempt villages and land grants, establishing their power as economic and social actors. According to Johannes Bronkhorst, the Brahmins could provide many services on matters such as statecraft or astrology, something movements like Buddhism were not able to provide. By that token, it was the Guptas who set up Temple Hinduism as we know it today. The site of Bad Pathari is a sophisticated network of temples and statues on the landscape of vast plains, providing protection during monsoon by deities like Shiva and Vishnu. During the Gupta period, the old Vedic pantheon was gradually sidelined in favor of Vaishnavism and Saivism, which focus on Vishnu and Shiva as the supreme beings respectively. Many Gupta kings would identify their royal ideology with the sacred traits of preservation and destruction embodied by Vishnu or Shiva. Sacred texts, like the Puranas, also came about during this period, and reflect some of the political reality of the time. Other forms of Hinduism, such as Shaktism, which focuses on the goddess Mahadevi, or less known denominations, like worship of Surya and Kartikeya, were also present. Ultimately, the Guptas were the forerunners of Hinduism's dominance in India. The last Gupta emperors faced an array of political instability and decentralization. Dynastic squabbling, combined with onslaughts of invasions from the northwest, slowly weakened the empire. After Chandragupta, the power and prestige of the crown slowly faded into obscurity, and by the 6th century CE, the Gupta's empire as a whole had faded into memory. However, the innovations of the Guptas are still with us to this day. Their contribution to art and religion, as well as the development of feudalism and Sanskrit in India, made their mark in India for the next millennium. Many later emperors looked to the Guptas as inspirations for kingship, statecraft, and religious innovations. This dynasty, while not as long-lived as some of its contemporaries like Eastern Rome or the Sasanians, made an incredible mark on India in ways that still impact the subcontinent's massive population to this day. This video is sponsored by our YouTube members and patrons, who get 2 exclusive videos weekly, not available anywhere else, for their kind support of our channel. You can join their ranks to watch more than 160 videos, including our series on the Pacific War, Punic Wars, Persian Wars, Spanish War of Succession, Russo-Japanese War, North African Campaign of World War II, History of Prussia, Italian Unification Wars, Risorgimento, Albigensian Crusades, and much more. Click the link in the description or pinned comment to get the exclusive videos, early access to all public videos, our schedule, wallpapers, access to a special Discord server where we're very active, and much more. Thanks for supporting us, we couldn't be doing it without your help. More videos on Indian history are on the way, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them. Recently, we've started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive videos. Join the ranks of patrons and YouTube members via the link in the description or by pressing the button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, join our private Discord, and much more. Please consider liking, commenting, and sharing, it helps immensely. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.